Hi, this is Renee Fisher, and I am the creator of Quarter Life Conference, and I really was looking forward to helping to host church, which is our theme for this Quarter Life Conference, because church is an area that I'm super passionate about. I grew up in the church, and baptized in junior high, recommitted my life in junior high. Accepted the Lord when I was like 5 years old, missionary kid, homeschooled. Like there's, if anyone is excited about the church, it's me. But now that I'm an adult, now that, I have my own faith, I, picked my own church, my parents do their own thing. I serve the Lord in different areas for different reasons. I know that in the course of my lifetime, I have incurred a lot of hurt, as well as inflicted a lot of hurt, if I'm honest, towards the church. And so today, or whatever day you are choosing to watch this video, I just want you to know that it is possible to forgive the church. And part of forgiving the church is forgiving yourself. And I recently wrote my fourth published book, coming out August 1st, and it's entitled Forgiving Others, Forgiving Me. So not only is church a really big topic that I care a lot about, especially for young adults, but forgiveness is also a big topic. And my whole life I've struggled with forgiving myself. And today, again, I just want to share 5 key points on how we can forgive the church, including ourselves. Because if we're honest with ourselves, there's a lot of people out there who love Jesus, but they don't love the church. And so I just kind of want to talk about some major misconceptions and things that we can maybe take responsibility for, but also things that I can encourage you on. So the first key point I want to talk about is, the church talks a lot, of course, about forgiving other people, but sometimes they don't really touch a lot about forgiving yourself. Sometimes the person that we struggle with forgiving the most, is me, is you. Maybe you've done something, maybe, you're hiding in some sort of, shame or condemnation or sin that maybe you've never even really told anyone except for, a close friend or family member. Or maybe your pastor hurt you in a way that you can no longer go to that church or maybe church at all. And, if we're honest with ourselves, there's always, we can always improve, we can always ask for forgiveness even for things that we're not aware of. And in my book, I share 2 stories. The first one is, apparently, one of my friends, I must have hurt her real bad because she sent me this message over Facebook, of course, and told me what a horrible person I was, and basically unfriended me before I even had the chance to either ask for her forgiveness or clarify, can you please tell me what I did wrong? I never really did get to find out, even when I brought, a dozen white roses to where she worked, which also happened to be a church, which was the church I was attending at the time. Again, those who hurt us the most usually are in our church. But I just, according to Matthew 5, Jesus said if we're at the altar, if we are confessing our sin, if we're in our prayer life, if we're taking communion and we realize, oh my gosh, I hurt this person, we're supposed to go to them and ask for their forgiveness. And unfortunately, she never told me what I did. And so I felt really bad because I never had the chance to truly apologize, whether or not I believed what she was saying was true, because I had a feeling that what she was saying wasn't necessarily true, but maybe there was some part of it that I did to hurt her without me knowing. But even still, to this day, I'll never know. And then the second story I share, which, I thought of all people, bringing white roses would at least, we'd be able to communicate or something. But no, the second person, also at a church, I was confiding in her about a boy. And if you're single, it's 99.9% about a boy. But when I came to talk to her, I was really conflicted because there was this guy that also at the church I liked, but I wasn't really sure what was going on because he was leading me on, but I just found out he had a girlfriend. And so I was really upset, and I felt like part of me knew like I shouldn't have pursued him in the way that I did, which was probably one of the reasons why I was upset. But I was also upset because he couldn't see like that he was leading me on. So anyway, I at least wanted to confide in, one of the other leaders at church, one of the other girl leaders, because I knew she'd understand. Totally forgot about that conversation until a couple weeks later, where she calls me and she says, by the way, that guy that you were talking about, and she kept like skirting around the issue, and then she finally told me, oh, we're dating now. And I just thought, what? Wait a second. Like, I literally cussed her out. Like, over the phone, when we got, together in person, I was so upset. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is, I thought he was dating someone else, but apparently that fell through like right around that same time that we kind of had a falling out, obviously. And then the second one was they started hanging out one-on-one and getting to know each other. And of course it wasn't expected and it wasn't something that was planned, but I just couldn't get over it. And so at the time I didn't realize that, this was right before I met Mark, my husband, that I didn't know I was ready. I didn't know I was ready to love. I was, ready to move on. But thankfully she forgave me for, getting all crazy, because she felt bad. Obviously that she didn't want to, put me in that situation, because that is actually the same thing happened to her before with someone else. Again, always about a guy, let's be honest. But it took me a while to forgive her and forgive him. But once I did, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I shouldn't have acted this way. But even still, please forgive me. And so even though, I'm now married, and God used that situation to show me that I was ready to forgive and move on. And God used, that situation in her life to kind of bring redemption to the story of a friendship that she had lost, and then now she's regained. And it's cool because we're still friends as well. Forgiving yourself is something that is also part of that process, because, I'll never know what I did to hurt her. And the first girl, and with the second one, like, I could have acted differently. That's usually always the case. We're never completely perfect in the moment when we're caught off guard. And so, take the time to get before God, and especially over a church situation, and ask God, is there anything that maybe I did that either I'm not aware of or I'm not proud of? And can you ask for forgiveness either to that person or to God himself, and move on? And the second part, which kind of flows into that, is forgiveness is a personal process. I may forgive in a different way than my friend does. Maybe I take longer to forgive, or maybe she is quicker to forgive, or maybe in a reverse situation, I'm quicker to forgive and she doesn't forgive me. Like, what happens if the person that you either need to ask for forgiveness from, or are afraid to ask for forgiveness, never chooses to either acknowledge you, or what if they never ask for forgiveness? And so there's a lot of people in the church that are walking around, like spiritual zombies. They're super hurt, and they're carrying around, Jesus says to be dead to sin. But what happens when that closure is like not quite there because you're still waiting on the other person? Well, the process is that, you can choose to forgive them, but setting up proper boundaries or that reconciliation is different. So you can't automatically say, just because I've forgiven someone, means we're going to be perfect friends, or, the reconciliation process is, the same thing. It's completely different. The third part, or the third key, is that forgiveness is a choice. And this one seems to be super easy or redundant, or, yeah, I've heard that before. We should know it's a choice. But seriously, there was a time in my life when I was struggling to quit my job and go into ministry full time, in a time when I wasn't ready. My whole life up until that point, I had been working really hard to be self-sufficient. And so by the time I had gotten there with my health, or gotten my dream job or that book contract or whatnot, and I had to go through that forgiveness process all over again, my anxiety, my panic attacks got the best of me. And so I ended up having to kind of go on a disability for a while, actually, and take some classes at Kaiser. And I felt like such a failure, to be honest, because if I'm a Christian, like, I should understand this choice and should be able to move on. But for whatever reason, I had never experienced a trial like that hurtful and that severe, to the point where I was suffering for a choice that, wasn't my choice. So I had to come to grips with asking God to forgive me for my 2%, 3%, 30%, whatever it was, regardless or not, if, it was happening to me and it wasn't my fault. It was so hard. But I started to see, okay, I'm starting to harbor, okay, so, sorry, getting ahead of myself. So number one, choose to forgive yourself. Number 2, forgiveness is a personal process. You can't judge someone else for their process, even if you feel like you're obedient, to God in your process, because maybe they haven't come to that place yet. Number 3, forgiveness is a choice. And I'm going to lead into number 4, which is unforgiveness kills. When I couldn't forgive that person or those people in the church or in a Christian workplace or whatever it may be, my body started to suffer, panic attacks, skin rashes, whatever it was, when we, like, let's say literally the person who we're struggling to forgive is in a jail cell. When we choose to not forgive someone, we're putting ourselves in that same jail cell with them. And so it's really hard to get to that place where we have control over our emotions, or we have the choice to forgive, and we do choose to forgive them, whether or not we had any part to play in that. And so, I know there's a parable in the Bible that talks about the unmerciful servant, but I know that there's, some part of me that just really wants to encourage you to say, unforgiveness has really taken a toll on me to the point where I've spent, so much of my life from 19 to now 31, of learning how to forgive myself. And forgiveness has really taken its toll on my body, especially physically. And so if you are struggling to forgive and you're just having a hard time letting go, I hope that this video can somehow impact you or encourage you to let it go, not in the way that you're letting them off the hook, but you're making that choice to forgive in that moment and to give it to God. Because the last thing I want you to do is, end up in the emergency room like I did with panic attacks, or just let it get to that point where it just owns you. And my last point, which is forgiveness matters. And the number one reason why it matters is because Jesus hung on a cross for our sin. I mean, he let forgiveness, he ended it once and for all. And the two thieves that were hanging on either side of him, one got it and one didn't. And one basically was like, please, remember me in paradise. And Jesus knew that he realized the gravity of his sin, and he was the guilty one, not Jesus. And so the fact that we can, in our sin, recognize that and say, Jesus, you have already finished this work on the cross. Please help me. Please remember me. Please forgive me. We can truly be set free. And, why put God back up there on the cross when he's already forgiven you? He's already set the record clean. He's wiped the slate clean. We are white as snow. That really plays a huge part on forgiving other people. If God has already forgiven us, we have to make that choice to forgive other people. We have to make that choice to forgive ourselves. So I hope those 5 keys are an encouragement to you for someone who might be feeling, I love Jesus, but I hate the church. We are all imperfect people. We are all hypocrites in our own right. And so the last place we should judge is the church, because we actually are judging ourselves. We are his bride. So I hope that I can kind of put things in a different perspective, whether you choose to go back to a church that hurt you or not participate in a church at all. Forgiveness is a personal thing, and I can't, show you what that looks like, but God can. And so thank you for letting me encourage you. I hope you'll, pre-order a copy of Forgiving Others, Forgiving Me on Amazon, and I hope that it will bless you and all the other speakers that we've put together on the topic of church. God bless.